Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Arlene Berger, and I'm so pleased to be spending Shabbat with you tonight. Let's begin with a song of community. It's a wish that we really need in these times for everybody to get on the same page. Hinne ma tovu manayim shavet achim gam yachad. Hinne ma tovu manayim shavet achim gam yachad. Hinne ma tov shavet achim gam yachad. Hinne ma tov shavet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shavet achim gam yachad. We'll continue with a Sabbath prayer by Ruth Bryn. God, help us now to make this a quiet Shabbat. After noise, we seek quiet. After crowds of indifferent strangers, we seek to touch those we love. After concentration on responsibility, we seek freedom to meditate, to listen to our inward selves. We open our eyes to the hidden beauties and the infinite possibilities in the world you are creating. We break open the gates of the reservoirs of goodness and kindness in ourselves and in others. We reach toward one holy, perfect moment of Shabbat. And we'll now welcome the Shabbat angels with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Welcome among us, messengers of Shalom, angels of the highest one. From deep within us, majesty of majesties, the blessed Holy One. Come then in Shalom, blessing us with Shalom, leaving us with holy Shalom. From deep within us, majesty of majesties, the blessed Holy One. So we've sung about community and we've welcomed the angels. We're now going to welcome the relationship between us, the people Israel, and God. And we'll do the first two and the last two verses of Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. Hishmianu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad. L'shemo tiferet v'lit hilah. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki hi mekor habracha merosh mikadem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Yamin u'smol tifrotzi v'et Adonai ta'aritzi al yad ish ben patzi v'nismecha v'nagila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela, boi b'shalom ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha u'b'tzola, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. We now turn to the Shema and its blessings, beginning with the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach, Baruch Adonai hamvorach, leolam va'ed. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars and their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'ma'ari v'aravim. Ahavat olam, with everlasting love. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shofteinu u'b'tumeinu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, u'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu ve'orech yameinu, uvahem negei yomam v'layla, v'ahavatecha al taseh mimenu le'olamim, baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol meodecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ela, asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam, v'shiftecha b'veitecha, v'lechtecha v'derech, v'shoftecha v'kumecha, ושרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בעיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all that is yours. These words which I command you this day shall be taken to heart. Teach them diligently to your children. Speak of them when you sit in your home, when you walk on your way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as a reminder above your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your home and upon your gates. Then you will remember and fulfill all my mitzvot and be holy before your God. When God's children beheld the power of the divine, they sang in praise of God, gladly accepting God's sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and the people Israel sang with great joy this song to you. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, norah tehilot oseh felech. Who is like you, God, among all that is worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Your children beheld your sovereignty as you divided the sea before Moses. This is my God, they responded, declaring, Adonai imlo leolam va'ed. Help us, Adonai our God, to lie down in peace and awaken us to life again, our sovereign. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. Save us for the sake of your mercy. Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. You, O God, guard us and deliver us. You are a gracious and merciful ruler. Guard our coming and our going. Grant us life and peace now and always. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Praised are you, Adonai, who spreads a shelter of peace over us, over all the people of Israel, and over Jerusalem. Time for a breath, as we're about to sing the Shamru, the song of Shabbat. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית olam. Beni uven b'nei Israel, oti li'olam, oti li'olam, oti li'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim v'et haaretz v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shavat vayinafash, Shavat vayinafash, Shavat vayinafash, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית olam. So I'm going to do something a little bit different this evening. And I am going to give my Dvar Torah now, right before the Amidah, instead of after Kiddush, as I usually do. And you'll understand why in a moment or two. So this week's Torah portion is Re'ah, and we are introduced within it to a legal collection that concludes in the 26th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. So we're getting near the end of the Torah. The laws in this parsha contain principles such as caring for the needy, avoidance of non-Israelite worship practices, and the remission of debts. They're all designed to govern our people's behavior in the Holy Land, which they're about to enter, and to bind the people to their God. So we're really at this penultimate point of community making. So this legal collection is a practical description of the Brit, or the covenantal relationship between the children of Israel and God, taken together with the extensive blessings and curses that we actually find in the beginning of this chapter. It reminds us that the covenantal relationship, the Brit with God, is reciprocal. It's a two-way street. We obey God's laws and remain loyal to God, and God will take care of us. We stray, and there are consequences. Our part of the bargain, according to this parsha, this Torah portion, is loyalty to the one God and hamakom, the chosen place for God's shrine. God's part of the bargain, protecting, rewarding, and loving us. Now, at one time in our history, the way that we reminded ourselves of the Brit was through making sacrifices. Today, happily, I believe, we no longer do sacrifices. So the way we remind ourselves of the Brit, of the covenant, is through prayer. Now, it's interesting. There's always been this discussion about kavanah and keva. Kavanah indicates saying a prayer with intention, and keva means saying a prayer because it's the fixed time to say it. It's a fixed prayer and an obligation. You say it even if you don't feel it. I think we all know what I'm talking about. Now, the rabbis understood this tension between kavanah and keva. They said, yes, you do need kavanah. You do need intentionality when you say a prayer. That's the ideal. But if you're not really feeling the davening, the praying at that moment, then there's a minimum obligation. And that is to say the 6 words of the Shema, which we just said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, and also to say the first paragraph of the Amidah. So I want to take a very short look, a brief look at the first line of the first paragraph of the Amidah, because we're obligated to say the Amidah 3 times a day, right? At Shachri in the morning, Mincha in the afternoon, and Ma'ariv at night, all 3 services of the day. But I wonder how many of us are really aware of the care with which the rabbis chose the specific words and prayers and phrases used within the Amidah. So the first line, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov. Blessed are you, God, our God, and the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now, today, we also might say, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, the God of Sarah, the God of Rebecca, the God of Rachel, and the God of Leah. But I'm only going to look at that very first line because the first line with the patriarchs comes straight from the Torah. So we begin the Amidah by introducing ourselves to God in this Amidah, this discussion moment, by using the very words that God used when God introduced God's self to Moses as the God of our forefathers. Now, don't you just love it, or didn't you just love it, when your kids would throw your words back in your face? That's kind of what we're doing here. We're using God's very words to say, hey, God, pay attention. We're here. You had a relationship. Have one with me. But unlike teenagers, we're not using God's own words out of spite or impishness. We're reminding God of a relationship that God claimed in pride. Now, we don't really know what Moses knew of his heritage at the time of the burning bush when Moses and God met for the first time. So one could say that God claimed the relationship with the 3 most important ancestors, the ones with whom God's relationship and their actions provided the best indications to Moses of what his relationship with God would entail. And how does Moses react when he hears God's words? With yirah. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid, had yirah, to look upon God. Here, translated as fear, yirah is a word used for fear of the Almighty that connotes awe and wonder. So even as we're introducing ourselves in the Amidah, all dressed up, trotting out all the possibilities of our relationship with God, we're doing so with fear and awe, humbly, with respect. And not only are we reminded of the 3 patriarchs when we say this, but we're also channeling Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our greatest teacher, when we do it, the epitome of humility and close relationship with God. That's a lot of message packed into one line. It also reminds us that just as God had an individual relationship with all of us collectively, and then a relationship with Abraham, and a separate relationship with Isaac, and a separate relationship with Jacob. It tells us that we too can have an individual relationship with God. That my relationship with God isn't going to be the same as your relationship with God, and it's not going to be the same as our neighbor's relationship with God. We have permission, we have the gift of each of us having an individual, specialized, one could say, relationship with God. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time, as I said, to go through the entire first paragraph of the Amidah, but I wanted to look at the first sentence because I was struck by the relationship to one of the subtexts in our Parsha, which is our multifaceted reciprocal relationship with God. We have our obligations of the Brit, and God has God's own obligations in the same Brit, in the same covenant, by using the very words that God used during introduction to Moses. We are implicitly accepting the Brit and the promises that our ancestors made to God, and we're reminding God of God's part of the bargain. The promise to Abraham to make his descendants a great nation. The promise is implicit and explicit throughout the entire Torah, and the blessings that we find in the beginning of today's Torah portion. As we are in this season of preparation for the high holidays, I leave you with this charge. When you next recite the Amidah, which is going to happen as soon as I'm done with this Dvar, think about the kavanah, the intention with which you are approaching the Creator. What is your relationship with God? Is it one of challenge, calmness, or the going into the unknown? Is it keva? Are you saying the prayer because it's an obligation? Or is it something entirely different? So we'll all keep this in mind as we say the Amidah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avotenu V'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ve'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'Koneh Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot Umevi Goel Ibnei Bneihem Leman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Metim Atah Rav Lehoshia Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Berofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Ba'al Geburot Umido Melech Melech Memit Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atah l'chachayot metim. Baruch atah Adonai mechaye hametim. You are eternally mighty, O God. You give life to the dead. Great is your ability to save. With loving kindness you sustain the living. With great compassion give life to all, helping the fallen and healing the sick, freeing the bound, and keeping faith with those who sleep in the dust. Who is like you, Almighty, and who can compare with you? A sovereign who causes death, causes life, and causes salvation to flower. Faithful are you to give life to all. Praised are you, Adonai, who gives life to all. You are holy, and your name is holy, and holy ones praise you each day. Praised are you, Adonai, the holy God. Oseh shalom bimramav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. May the one who brings peace on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who dwell on earth. And let us say, Amen. We'll now say a prayer for healing. And as we say this prayer, we hold in our hearts all those who are ill, those we know, and even those we don't know, especially given the pandemic that we are living through right now. We send prayers of continued health and strength to all the caregivers out there, to all the healers who've put themselves on the front line to take care of us and to help keep our country and our society functioning. Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habracha le'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha la'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We turn to Kiddush. I invite you to lift your Kiddush cup with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'hava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zeicher letziat Mitzrayim. Ki banu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha v'yahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. It's now time for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, latet gidula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye ha'aratzot v'lo samanu mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralenu kechol hamonam, anachnu kodim u'mishtachavim u'modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו, וגובהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אלון, אמת מלכנו אפסולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות על לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על kol haaretz. Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, echad. We conclude our service with the Mourner's Kaddish. I invite everyone to take a moment and hold in your heart those who you have loved and lost, whether you are currently in mourning, observing a yurtzeit, or if you feel the need and desire to say Kaddish for those who have died and don't have anyone to say Kaddish for them. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah, v'olma divrach hirutei v'yamlit malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'adala ubizman kariv v'imru amen, Yehei shmei rabah mevorach le'olam olamei olmaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei b'kedusha b'rechu, Ve'elam min kol berchata v'shirata, v'shbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'olma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who brings peace on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who dwell on earth. And let us say, Amen. I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbat of peace, love, happiness, health, and friendship. And I look forward to celebrating Shabbat with you next week.